Hey friends, this is Danny Berry, Heart Bar Cowboy Ministry, and it's Sunday. We got done with church. I came out and it was doing chores and decided to do a little bit more in the forge. And I know there's a lot of people that don't get to go to church, or maybe it's from your work, or maybe you just don't feel comfortable right now. And I've got a message that kind of laid on me. Talked a little bit about it at church this morning, but I'm going to just take a quick minute and talk about it right here. I'm going to make something real quick. I'm going to make a cross in the forge here. You can watch it come into play right here. But what's on my mind is sometimes things are just hard, right? And we talk about getting to the cross. But sometimes things in life just make it hard, right? And so as we're making this cross here on the anvil, I want this piece of steel. This is a 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch piece of square stock. And think about that as our lives. And in this piece of steel, there's a couple grooves cut. And that's kind of how life is, right? There's a lot of these gouges and cuts and things that are hard. And sometimes our life don't resemble anything that has to do with the cross. But if we will get into the forge, or if we will allow God to come into us, I'm going to show you what can happen from something that is, I guess we could look at as scarred or broken. It's compromised. It's got cuts in it. I'll show you that. I don't know if it shows up here or not. See the cut? It's cut from one end, and then it's cut from the other end. If you was actually trying to use that for something, it's not strong at all. It's not strong at all. So this is like our life. You know, we got these voids and we got these cuts. But if we will get into the forge, if we'll let the warmth of God, if we want to look at it that way, come into us, and we will allow Him to do what it is that only He can do, let's see what changes. As we get into the forge and life starts getting hard, it seems like things are getting ripped apart. Have you ever felt like that? You feel like that in life, things just keep getting ripped apart. So all these, what would seem like weaknesses to us maybe, seem like they're just coming apart. We started off as this square piece of steel, but now it looks like something totally different. That's how life is sometimes. Sometimes things that we start out as, life causes these cuts and these grooves, and we end up looking like something totally different. I'm going to stop right here for a second. I'm going to put this back in the forge in a second. Notice we just keep changing. Things get harder. We just keep getting torn apart. Let's just think about all these different pieces. Maybe that's work, or maybe that's school, or just life. And it seems like when we were all together at once, but now things just keep getting separated, and we just keep farther and farther apart. Things just get harder and harder. And as I was shaping that there, you see, and I was having to hit harder. The heat had left it. Sometimes when the farther we get away from God, the farther we get away from the forge, we lose some of what we need. So I'm going to put this back in there and let it soak back up some heat. Soaked up a little bit of the heat. And when we allow God in our life, when we allow that, we get easier to shape. And as we start to cool off and things start to change, sometimes we need to go back into the fire, back into God's Word, back into something that can change us. As we come back out, we're going to shake this up a little bit. That's why church is important, or maybe a Bible study, or someone, maybe it's just a friend, someone that you can study with, or maybe it's just by yourself right now. Things start getting harder and harder when we start losing the warmth. When the farther away we get from God and we start relying on our strength. So when I'm trying to beat on this, when it's cold, when the metal's not hot anymore, that's what it's like. You ever feel like that? You're just pounding on something and nothing's really going where it needs to go. That's when we need to get back and get close to God. That can be in lots of forms. That can, sometimes for me, it's on my horse. Sometimes it's right here working in the forge. I don't know where it's at for you, but sometimes, even if we're not in church, we need to get close to God. Look at that, friends. I don't know if that shows up or not. The hole, there's a lot of ways you can look at this. I'm going to cool it off. There's a lot of ways you can look at this. One is all of these things that are hurts in our life that represented those cuts. If we will keep going back to God, it'll all go to the cross. That's where forgiveness comes from. That's where if we're feeling not worthy, we feel all of these things, we can find all of that at the cross. This hole in the middle I was getting ready to talk about, you can look at that for lots of reasons. I like to look at it like this, that it represents that when we're not going to the cross, we're not going to God, we all have a hole, right? But if we allow God to come into us, if we allow God to shape us, if we follow Him, everything's going to go to the cross. I've got one more thing. I talked about at church this morning. This is another one that I made. And you notice I was having a really bad day when I was making this one here, and I decided to make one more hit, and it broke that, because this is a real thin piece of metal, and so it's a lot more fragile. And maybe you feel that way too. Maybe do you feel maybe that you feel a little bit more fragile at times. Anyway, I made that one last hit and it broke it, and I almost just got rid of it. But then as I carried it around and I got to thinking about it, and I was in the house, I'm going to keep this one because it's a reminder that we need to bring all of our brokenness to the cross. So no matter how broken you feel, no matter how hurt you feel, there's nothing that can fix it. There's nothing that can make it better. There's nothing except for the cross, except for Jesus. And this one represents that there's brokenness. There's brokenness in my life. There's brokenness in your life, I'm sure. And that when we come to the cross, the brokenness all ends at the cross. Anyway, friends, that's what was laid on me this morning. Sometimes when we're at church, there's so many people that need Jesus. And sometimes we go do our duty. We go to church and maybe we preach, or maybe we sit in the pews. But the world needs Jesus. The world needs the cross. The world needs to realize that we need to take our brokenness to Him. Well, anyway, friends, I hope you have a good day. And I hope that you can take all your burdens to the cross and let Jesus heal you. Have a great day.